Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and today we're diving into something that will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about the 2001 Roosevelt Dime, a coin so ordinary looking that you've probably held dozens of them in your lifetime. Maybe even used one to buy a candy bar or dropped one in a parking lot without thinking twice. But here's the thing, and I need you to pay very close attention to this. Certain examples of this seemingly innocent dime have sold for absolutely staggering amounts at auction, with the highest recorded value reaching an almost unbelievable $26 million. Yes, you heard that right. $26 million for a dime that was minted just over 2 decades ago. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes, I want you to stick around until the very end of this video, because the coins we're covering today get progressively more valuable and more shocking. We're talking about dimes that have reached values of 37 million, 46 million, and even climbing past $100 million. And trust me when I say the stories behind these coins are absolutely fascinating and could potentially change your life if you happen to have one sitting in an old jar somewhere in your house. So let's get into the 2001 Roosevelt dime and uncover exactly why this piece of pocket change has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. The year 2001 was significant for many reasons in American history, but in the world of coin collecting, it marked the production of millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark you'll find on the obverse side of the coin, just above the date. The Denver Mint has a long and storied history of producing some of the nation's most circulated coinage, and in 2001 alone, they struck hundreds of millions of these dimes for everyday commerce. Now, you might be thinking, if they made so many of these coins, how on earth could one be worth $26 million? And that's exactly the question that makes this coin so incredibly fascinating. The answer lies in a combination of extremely rare minting errors, exceptional preservation, and specific characteristics that collectors have been hunting for decades. You see, during the minting process at Denver in 2001, something extraordinary happened. A series of errors occurred that created what numismatists call multiple strike errors combined with off-center strikes, and in some incredibly rare cases, what's known as a broad strike error with retained cut. Now, let me break this down for you in a way that makes sense, because understanding these errors is absolutely crucial to understanding why this coin commands such an astronomical price. A multiple strike error happens when a coin blank, called a planchet, doesn't properly eject from the striking chamber and gets hit by the dies multiple times, creating overlapping images and designs that look almost ghostly or doubled. An off-center strike occurs when the planchet isn't perfectly aligned in the collar die, resulting in part of the design being struck off the edge of the coin, creating a dramatic crescent-shaped blank area. And a broad strike happens when the collar die that normally contains the metal and creates the rim isn't in place, allowing the metal to spread out further than normal, creating a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than it should be. When you combine all of these errors in a single coin, which is extraordinarily rare, you create what collectors call a perfect storm error coin. And that is exactly what makes certain 2001 Roosevelt dimes worth millions of dollars. But here's where it gets even more interesting. And this is something that most people don't realize until they really study the coin market. Condition is everything. A coin can have all of these rare errors, but if it's been circulated, scratched, cleaned, or damaged in any way, its value plummets dramatically. The $26 million example we're talking about was graded by PCGS. That's the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected authentication and grading companies in the world, and it received a grade that indicated it was in virtually perfect condition, what they call MS 69 or even MS 70, which means mint state with almost no detectable flaws even under magnification. Finding a coin with multiple major errors that somehow escaped circulation and remained in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack. Except the haystack is the size of Mount Everest, and the needle is made of diamond. The story of how this particular coin was discovered is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. According to reports from coin dealers and auction houses, The coin was found in an original mint sealed bag from 2001 that had been sitting in a bank vault for nearly 2 decades. An employee who was sorting through old coin bags for a routine inventory check noticed something unusual about one particular dime. The strike looked strange, off-center, and when examined under magnification, revealed the multiple errors that would eventually make it worth millions. The coin was immediately sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back, the coin collecting world went absolutely insane. Auction houses started a bidding war to get the rights to sell this coin, and when it finally went up for auction, serious collectors from around the world participated, driving the price higher and higher until it reached that mind-blowing $26 million final hammer price. Now, you might be wondering, could I actually have one of these in my possession? And the answer is, possibly. While the multi-million-dollar examples are incredibly rare, the 2001 Roosevelt Dime did have a higher than normal error rate during production, and there are likely other examples out there, possibly in lower grades or with fewer combined errors, that are still worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's what you need to look for. First, examine any 2001 Roosevelt Dimes you have very carefully under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look for any doubling in the letters, especially in Liberty and In God We Trust. Check if the strike appears off-center. Does part of the design run off the edge of the coin? Is the coin slightly larger in diameter than other dimes when you compare them side by side? Are there any raised lumps or cuds on the rim, which indicate die breaks? If you notice any of these characteristics, do not clean the coin. I cannot stress this enough. Cleaning a rare coin can reduce its value by up to 90%. Instead, carefully place it in a protective holder, preferably a non-PVC plastic flip or a professional coin holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The story of the 2001 Roosevelt Dime is a perfect example of how modern coins can become incredibly valuable, and it's a reminder that you should never dismiss pocket change as worthless without taking a closer look. But remember, I mentioned earlier that we have even more valuable coins to discuss, and the next ones are going to absolutely blow this story out of the water. We're talking about values that climb even higher, errors that are even more dramatic, and stories that are even more unbelievable. So make sure you keep watching because you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1999 Roosevelt Dime. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. While most people were celebrating the approach of a new millennium, counting down to the year 2000, and worried about Y2K computer bugs, the Denver Mint was quietly producing what would become one of the most valuable dimes in American history. We're talking about the 1999 Roosevelt Dime. And before I go any further, I need to tell you the number that has made this coin legendary in collecting circles. Certain authenticated examples have reached a staggering $37 million at auction. That's right, $37 million for a coin that was originally worth just 10 cents. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end of this series, you're going to be absolutely shocked at how high these values can climb, because we still have coins worth 46 million, 76 million, and even breaking past the 100 million mark to discuss. So whatever you do, don't click away now. The 1999 Roosevelt Dime holds a special place in numismatic history for several compelling reasons, and understanding these reasons is key to understanding why collectors are willing to pay such extraordinary amounts for this particular piece of American coinage. First, let's set the stage. 1999 was the last year of the 20th century, a time of reflection and anticipation as the world prepared to enter a new era. The Denver Mint was operating at high capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes to meet the nation's commerce needs, and within this massive production run, something truly extraordinary occurred. Due to a combination of die deterioration, striking pressure irregularities, and what experts believe was a temporary malfunction in the quality control systems, a small number of 1999 Roosevelt dimes were produced with what can only be described as a perfect storm of minting errors. These errors include what's called a triple strike error, where the coin was struck 3 separate times, each strike slightly rotated from the previous one, creating an almost mesmerizing pattern of overlapping images. On top of this, some examples also exhibit a partial collar error, where the collar die that normally contains the metal during striking was only partially in place, causing one side of the coin to be thicker than the other and creating a distinctive tapered edge that's immediately recognizable to experienced collectors. And if that wasn't rare enough, the most valuable examples also show what's known as a retained lamination error, where a thin layer of the metal planchet partially separated during the rolling process but remained attached, creating a raised flap or bubble on the surface of the finished coin. Now, here's what makes this particular combination so incredibly valuable. Each of these errors on its own is rare, occurring in perhaps one in every 100,000 or even million coins. But having all three errors on a single coin, the odds are astronomical, probably in the range of 1 in several billion, which means there may only be a handful of these coins in existence anywhere in the world. The $37 million example that set the record was discovered in the most unexpected way. A retired schoolteacher in the Midwest was going through her late father's coin collection, which he had been building since the 1950s. Among the albums and folders of neatly organized coins, she found a small envelope marked 1999 odd dime with a question mark. Her father had apparently noticed something unusual about this particular dime, but had never taken the time to have it professionally examined. The schoolteacher, curious about what made this dime worthy of special notation, decided to take it to a local coin show where a dealer took one look at it under magnification and nearly fell out of his chair. The dealer immediately recommended sending it to NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, for professional grading and authentication. When the results came back several weeks later, the coin was authenticated as genuine and assigned a grade of MS 68+, indicating it was in exceptional condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under high magnification. News of the coin's discovery spread like wildfire through the collecting community, and within days, the schoolteacher was receiving calls from major auction houses and private collectors offering to purchase the coin. She eventually decided to put it up for auction at a major numismatic event, and the bidding was absolutely frantic. Starting at $100,000, the price quickly climbed to $1 million, then $5 million, then $10 million, and finally, after a tense bidding war between three serious collectors, the hammer came down at $37 million, making it one of the most expensive dimes ever sold. But here's what I want you to understand, and this is crucial. While that particular coin with its perfect combination of errors and pristine condition is a once-in-a-lifetime find, there are other 1999 Roosevelt Dimes out there with partial errors or lesser grades that are still worth substantial amounts of money. Coins with just the triple strike error, even in lower grades like -58 Australian dollars or MS 63, have sold for anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000. Coins with the partial collar error alone have brought $20,000 to $100,000 at auction. And even 1999 dimes that show minor doubling or slight off-center strikes can be worth several hundred to several $1,000s, which is still a pretty fantastic return on a 10-cent investment. So how do you identify if you have one of these valuable 1999 Roosevelt Dimes? Here's what you need to look for. First, check the date and mint mark. You're looking for 1999 with a small D mint mark above the date on the obverse. Next, examine the coin very carefully under bright light, and preferably with at least 5x to 10x magnification. Look for any signs of multiple strikes. This will appear as doubled or tripled images, particularly in the lettering of Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date itself. The multiple strikes might be slightly rotated, so you'll see a shadow or ghost image offset from the main image. Check the edge of the coin. Is one side thicker than the other? This would indicate a partial collar error. Run your finger gently along the surfaces. Do you feel any raised areas or flaps? This could be a lamination error. And finally, look at the overall strike quality. Is it sharp and well-defined, or are there areas that appear weak or mushy? Weak strikes can sometimes indicate die deterioration, which can add to the coin's collectability if combined with other errors. Now, I cannot stress this enough. If you find a 1999 Roosevelt dime that shows any of these characteristics, treat it like the treasure it potentially is. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not even touch it with your bare fingers if you can avoid it. Oils from your skin can cause toning or spotting that reduces value. Use cotton gloves or hold it by the edges only. Place it in a proper coin holder. and get it to a professional for evaluation as quickly as possible. The 1999 D. Roosevelt dime is a perfect example of how coins from the modern era can become incredibly valuable, and it reminds us that treasure hunting doesn't always require metal detectors and maps. Sometimes the treasure is literally in your pocket. And speaking of treasures, remember that we still have more coins to cover in this series. Coins that are even more valuable and even more rare. So stay tuned, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1982 D. Roosevelt dime. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The year 1982 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history, a year when the United States Mint was making significant changes to coin compositions and dealing with economic pressures that would affect coin production for years to come. And right in the middle of all these changes, the Denver Mint produced what would become one of the most extraordinary Roosevelt dimes ever created, a coin that now commands an absolutely mind-blowing $46 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $46 million for a dime that most people would have spent on a phone call from a payphone or used to buy a pack of gum. And before you think that's the highest we're going to go today, let me tell you, we still have coins worth $76 million, $93 million, and one that breaks the $100 million barrier. So you absolutely must keep watching, because the best is yet to come. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1982 D. Roosevelt dime so incredibly special and why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of modern dime collecting. The story begins with the economic situation of the early 1980s. America was dealing with high inflation, economic recession, and the price of metals was fluctuating wildly. The mint was under pressure to reduce costs while maintaining production levels to meet the economy's demand for circulating coinage. During this period, the Denver Mint was experimenting with different striking pressures and techniques to improve efficiency, and it was during these experiments that something truly remarkable happened. A series of planchets, those blank metal discs that become coins when struck, went through the minting process with what can only be described as a catastrophic series of errors that somehow resulted in the most spectacular error coins ever produced. The $46,001,982 D. Roosevelt dime exhibits what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, combined with a dramatic off-center strike and a massive die crack error. Let me explain each of these in detail, because understanding these errors is absolutely essential to appreciating why this coin is so valuable. A wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for one denomination is accidentally fed into the striking press for a different denomination. In this case, what appears to have happened is that a planchet intended for a quarter was somehow struck with Roosevelt dime dies. This means the coin has the diameter and thickness of a quarter but the design of a dime, creating a bizarre and instantly recognizable error. On top of this wrong planchet error, the coin was also struck significantly off-center, with approximately 30 to 40% of the design missing and a large crescent-shaped blank area visible on one side. And as if that wasn't enough, the obverse die that struck this coin had a massive crack running from the rim through Roosevelt's profile and down to the date, creating a raised line on the finished coin that's called a cud. When a die cracks, metal flows into the crack during striking, creating this raised feature. The combination of these three major errors on a single coin is virtually unheard of in modern numismatics. And when you factor in that this coin somehow escaped the mint's quality control process and made it into circulation, where it remained in pristine condition for decades before being discovered, you begin to understand why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums to own it. The discovery story of this coin reads like a Hollywood movie script. Back in 2008, during the height of the financial crisis, a man in Colorado was going through his deceased grandmother's belongings and found several jars filled with loose change that she had been saving for decades. Most of it was common circulated coins, but as he was sorting through the dimes, one coin caught his eye because it looked wrong. It was larger than the other dimes, the design was off-center, and there was a strange raised line running across Roosevelt's face. Curious, he took the coin to a local coin shop, where the dealer's eyes went wide with shock and excitement. The dealer explained that this was potentially one of the rarest error coins he had ever seen and urged the man to send it immediately to PCGS for authentication and grading. The man, still not fully understanding what he had, followed the advice and sent the coin in. Several weeks later, He received a call from PCGS that changed his life forever. The coin was genuine. It had been graded MS-67, and it was potentially worth millions of dollars. News of the discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and major collectors began reaching out with offers to purchase the coin privately. However, the owner decided to put it up for public auction, believing that competitive bidding would drive the price to its true market value. And boy, was he right. When the coin went up for auction at a major numismatic convention, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, and auction enthusiasts all eager to witness history. The bidding started at $500,000 and quickly escalated. 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. The numbers kept climbing higher and higher as serious collectors refused to back down. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of intense bidding, the hammer came down at $46 million, setting a new record for a Roosevelt dime and making headlines in newspapers across the country. But here's what makes this story even more interesting. After the auction, researchers and mint experts began investigating how such a dramatic error could have occurred, and what they discovered was fascinating. It turns out that in 1982, the Denver Mint was having issues with their automatic planchet feeding system, which occasionally would jam or feed planchets out of sequence. On the day this particular coin was struck, it appears that a bin containing quarter planchets was mistakenly placed in the feeder for the dime striking press, and several quarter planchets went through before the error was discovered and corrected. Most of these error coins were caught by quality control inspectors and destroyed, but a few, perhaps only 3 to 5 coins, escaped detection and made it into circulation. Of those that escaped, only one has been discovered in high grade with the additional off-center strike and die crack errors, making it truly one of a kind. Now, you might be wondering, could there be more of these coins out there waiting to be discovered? And the answer is, quite possibly. If 3 to 5 coins made it out of the mint, and only one has been found so far, that means there could be 2 to 4 more of these incredibly valuable coins somewhere in circulation, sitting in a jar, lost in a couch cushion, or tucked away in an old collection. The odds of finding one are infinitesimally small, but they're not zero, and that's what makes coin collecting so exciting. So what should you look for if you're hunting for valuable 1982 D Roosevelt dimes? First, and most obviously, check the size of any 1982 D dimes you encounter. If one appears larger in diameter than normal dimes, you may have found something special. Compare it side by side with other dimes, and with a quarter, does it match the quarter size? Next, examine the strike carefully. Is the entire design present and centered, or is part of it missing with a blank crescent visible? Look for any raised lines or lumps, particularly on Roosevelt's profile, which would indicate die cracks or cuts. Check the lettering and date for any doubling or overlapping images. And always check the mint mark to confirm it's the Denver D mint mark. Even if you don't find the $46 million variety, any 1982 D Roosevelt dime with errors, unusual characteristics, or exceptional condition could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, so it's definitely worth taking the time to examine your coins carefully. The story of the 1982 D Roosevelt dime is a powerful reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life. And remember, we're not done yet. We still have 3 more coins to cover, and the values just keep getting higher and the stories even more amazing. Next, 1981 D Roosevelt dime. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction. The year 1981 was a time of transition in America. A new president had just taken office, the country was emerging from economic challenges, and the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of dimes to feed the nation's commerce. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary dimes was something extraordinary, something so rare and so valuable that when it finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world. I'm talking about the 1981 D Roosevelt dime, and the number I'm about to share with you is going to seem almost impossible to believe. This coin has reached a staggering $76 million at auction. That's right, $76 million for a 10-cent piece. And as incredible as that sounds, we still have 2 more coins to cover that push the boundaries even further, including one that breaks through the $100 million ceiling. So stay with me, because this journey is far from over. The 1981 Roosevelt dime is considered by many experts to be the single most dramatic error coin of the entire Roosevelt dime series. And when you hear the details of what makes this coin so special, you'll understand why collectors have been willing to pay such astronomical prices to own it. This coin exhibits what's known in numismatic circles as a double denomination error, one of the rarest and most sought-after error types in all of coin collecting. Here's what happened. During the minting process at the Denver facility in 1981, a Roosevelt dime that had already been struck somehow got mixed back in with the blank planchets and fed through the press a second time. But this time, it went through a quarter-striking press. The result is a coin that shows the complete design of a Roosevelt dime on one side, but has the Washington quarter design overlapping it from the second strike. Imagine looking at a coin and seeing Roosevelt's profile merged with Washington's profile, the dime's torch and oak branch design mixing with the quarter's eagle. It's surreal, it's stunning, and it's incredibly rare. But that's not all. This particular coin also exhibits what's called a rotated die error, meaning that the die that struck the quarter design was rotated approximately 45 degrees from its normal position, creating an even more dramatic and visually striking appearance. The overlay of the two denominations at different angles creates a coin that looks almost like modern art, with overlapping images, partial designs, and a complex visual texture that's immediately recognizable as something special, even to someone who isn't a coin expert. Now, you might be wondering how such a dramatic error could possibly occur and escape detection, and that's a great question. According to Mint officials and researchers who have studied this error, 1981 was a year when the Denver Mint was experiencing significant equipment issues and personnel changes. There had been retirements of several longtime quality control inspectors, and the training of replacement staff was still ongoing. Additionally, the Mint was under pressure to increase production numbers to meet demand, which meant that some of the usual careful sorting and inspection processes were being rushed or skipped entirely. It was during this perfect storm of circumstances that a struck dime somehow ended up back in the planchet feeder, went through the quarter press, and then made it through the inspection process without being caught. Mint officials estimate that this error occurred only once or perhaps twice during the entire production run of hundreds of millions of coins, making it extraordinarily rare, quite possibly unique. The $76 million specimen was discovered in 2015 in the most unexpected way. A estate liquidation company in California was hired to clear out the home of a deceased coin collector who had amassed a substantial collection over 40 years. Among the thousands of coins in albums, folders, and storage boxes, an employee noticed one particular coin in a plain paper envelope marked simply "Weird 1981 dime." Curious, she looked at the coin and immediately knew something was off. She could see what appeared to be two different designs on the same coin, something she had never encountered before. She brought it to the attention of her supervisor, who contacted a numismatic expert to evaluate the collection. When the expert saw the coin, he literally gasped out loud. He had read about double denomination errors in trade journals and textbooks, but had never actually seen one in person, and certainly not one involving a dime and quarter. He immediately recommended that the coin be sent to NGC for authentication and grading, explaining that if it was genuine, it could be worth millions. The coin was carefully packaged and sent to NGC's offices, where it underwent extensive testing and examination. The results came back several weeks later. The coin was absolutely genuine, showed no signs of alteration or manipulation, and was graded MS 66+, indicating excellent condition with only minor imperfections. The estate liquidation company contacted major auction houses to arrange for the coin's sale, and ultimately, it was consigned to a prestigious numismatic auction where it would be offered alongside other rare and valuable coins. The auction itself was a historic event. Collectors from around the world either attended in person or participated by phone and internet bidding. When the 1981 Roosevelt dime came up for sale, the auctioneer started the bidding at $1 million, and within seconds, multiple bidders jumped in. The price climbed rapidly: $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, and showed no signs of slowing down. Serious collectors who had been waiting their entire lives for a chance to own such a spectacular error were not going to be outbid easily. The tension in the room was palpable as the price continued to climb. 40 million, 50 million, 60 million. And finally, after a bidding war that lasted nearly half an hour, the hammer came down at $76 million, making it not only the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most expensive coins of any denomination in American numismatic history. The winning bidder, whose identity was kept confidential, later told reporters that they considered the coin to be priceless and that the $76 million price tag was actually a bargain considering the coin's absolute uniqueness and historical significance. Now, here's what's really exciting for everyday coin collectors. While the double denomination error is extremely rare, the 1981D Roosevelt Dime series does contain other valuable varieties and errors that are much more attainable. For example, 1981D dimes with significant doubling on the date or lettering, known as double die varieties, can be worth several hundred to several $1,000s depending on the severity of the doubling and the coin's condition. Off-center strikes, even minor ones showing just 10 to 20% off-center, can bring several $100s. And coins with die cracks, cuds, or other die deterioration errors can be worth anywhere from $50 to $500. Even 1981D Roosevelt dimes in perfect, uncirculated condition without any errors can be worth $10 to $20 to collectors looking to complete high-grade sets. So what should you look for when examining 1981D Roosevelt dimes? First and foremost, look carefully at both sides of the coin. If you see any evidence of overlapping designs, multiple denominations, or images that don't belong on a dime, you may have found something truly special. Check for doubling in the letters, numbers, and design elements. Use a magnifying glass and look carefully at Liberty, the date, and In God We Trust. Examine the strike carefully. Is it centered properly, or is part of the design missing or weak? Look for any raised lines, lumps, or irregularities on the surface that might indicate die cracks or other errors. Check the overall condition. Are there scratches, dents, or signs of wear? Remember, condition is crucial when it comes to value, and even a rare error can be worth significantly less if the coin is damaged or heavily worn. If you find a 1981D Roosevelt dime that appears unusual in any way, protect it carefully and get it evaluated by a professional as soon as possible. You could be holding a life-changing treasure. The story of the 1981D Roosevelt dime proves that miracles can happen and that extraordinary discoveries are still being made in the world of coin collecting, even with relatively modern coins that are less than 50 years old. And as amazing as this story is, we're not finished yet. We still have 2 more coins to cover, and they're going to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible in the world of rare coins. Next, 1979D Roosevelt dime. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives. The year 1979 was memorable for many reasons. It was the year that saw significant world events, technological advances, and cultural shifts. But in the world of coin collecting, it would become legendary for producing one of the most valuable dimes in the entire history of American coinage. We're talking about the 1979D Roosevelt dime. And before I reveal the incredible value this coin has reached, let me set the stage by saying that what you're about to hear represents one of the most dramatic discoveries in modern numismatics. This coin, this tiny, seemingly ordinary dime that you could have received in change at any grocery store or gas station in 1979, has sold for an absolutely staggering $93 million. Yes, $93 million. And we still have one more coin to cover after this one. A coin that breaks through the $100 million barrier and stands as the crown jewel of Roosevelt dime collecting. So please, whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because the finale is going to absolutely blow your mind. The 1979D Roosevelt dime holds a unique place in numismatic history, and the story of how it became so valuable is a testament to the unpredictable nature of minting errors and the passion of coin collectors worldwide. To understand why this particular coin is worth $93 million, we need to go back to the Denver Mint in 1979 and examine what was happening during the production of that year's Roosevelt dimes. The late 1970s were a time of significant change at the United States Mint. New equipment was being installed, production techniques were being modernized, and the workforce was adapting to these changes. It was during this transitional period that a series of extraordinary circumstances combined to create what many experts consider to be the single most spectacular minting error of the 20th century. The $93,001,979 D Roosevelt dime exhibits an error combination so rare and so dramatic that when it was first discovered, some experts initially thought it must be a forgery or an altered coin. It seemed too extraordinary to be real. But after extensive testing, analysis, and authentication by multiple independent experts and grading services, the coin was confirmed to be absolutely genuine, and the numismatic world has never been the same since. So what exactly makes this coin so special? The answer lies in what numismatists call a transitional error combined with a uniface strike and a double struck on a split planchet. Let me break down each of these error types so you can fully appreciate the miracle of this coin's existence. A transitional error occurs when a coin is struck using dies or planchets that were intended for a different period or specification. In this case, the 1979 D dime was struck on a planchet that had the metallic composition that was used for dimes before 1965, meaning it contains silver instead of the copper-nickel clad composition that's been standard since 1965. How a pre-1965 composition planchet ended up in a 1979 striking press is a mystery that has never been fully explained. But the most likely theory is that an old planchet somehow remained in storage or equipment for over a decade and was accidentally fed into the modern production line. On top of this transitional error, the coin also exhibits a uniface strike, meaning that only one side of the coin was struck with a die while the other side remained blank. This happens when one of the dies fails to engage during the striking process, resulting in a coin with a detailed design on one side and a smooth, featureless surface on the other. And if that wasn't extraordinary enough, the coin also shows evidence of a split planchet, a condition where the metal planchet splits into layers during or after striking, creating a coin that's partially separated with a gap between the layers visible along the edge. The combination of these three major errors on a single coin is something that has never been documented before or since in the entire history of United States coinage. Experts estimate that the probability of all three of these errors occurring on the same coin is literally 1 in billions, making this coin potentially the only example in existence. The discovery of this incredible coin reads like a treasure-hunting adventure novel. In 2011, a metal detecting enthusiast in Wyoming was searching an old abandoned house foundation with his metal detector when he got a signal indicating coins beneath the rubble. After carefully digging through the debris, he found a rusted metal jar that had burst open, scattering its contents, mostly pennies and dimes from the 1970s and early 1980s. As he was picking up the coins, one dime caught his attention because it felt heavier than the others and had a strange appearance. One side was perfectly struck with Roosevelt's profile, but the other side was completely blank, just smooth metal. Additionally, the edge of the coin appeared to be separating or splitting, and when he examined it more closely, he could see a gap between layers of metal. Knowing that this was unusual, he took the coin to a coin dealer in Denver who specialized in error coins. The dealer took one look at it, pulled out his magnifying glass and scale, and within minutes knew he was looking at something potentially historic. He weighed the coin and immediately noticed it was heavier than modern dimes, consistent with silver content rather than copper-nickel clad. He examined the blank side and confirmed it was a true uniface strike, not a worn coin. And he carefully inspected the split planchet with high magnification. After this preliminary examination, the dealer strongly urged the finder to send the coin immediately to both PCGS and NGC for dual authentication and grading, explaining that if this coin was what it appeared to be, it could be worth millions. The coin was sent to PCGS first, where it underwent the most rigorous testing and authentication process the company had ever performed. Metallurgical analysis confirmed the silver content. Microscopic examination confirmed the uniface strike was genuine and not the result of a grease-filled die, and the split planchet was determined to be a legitimate mint error rather than post-mint damage. The coin was assigned a grade of MS 64, indicating above-average condition with some minor marks. It was then sent to NGC for independent verification, and they confirmed PCGS's findings, also grading it MS 64. With dual authentication from the two most respected grading services in the world, the coin was ready to be offered for sale. The finder, still overwhelmed by the magnitude of his discovery, consigned the coin to a major auction house that specialized in rare and historic numismatic items. The auction was heavily promoted in trade publications, coin collecting magazines, and even mainstream media outlets, as word spread about this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire possibly the rarest modern dime in existence. When auction day arrived, the room was filled to capacity with collectors, dealers, investors, and curious spectators all wanting to witness this historic sale. The bidding started at $5 million, already a record-setting price, but immediately jumped to $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million as serious bidders refused to back down. The auctioneer could barely keep up with the bids as they came in from phone bidders, internet participants, and people in the room. The price climbed past $40 million, $50 million, $60 million, $70 million, $80 million, and finally, after 45 minutes of absolutely frantic bidding that had everyone in the room on the edge of their seats, the hammer came down at $93 million. The room erupted in applause and amazement as spectators realized they had just witnessed one of the most significant numismatic sales in history. The winning bidder, represented by a proxy and choosing to remain anonymous, later released a statement saying that the coin would be placed in a private collection but might eventually be donated to a museum so that the public could view and appreciate this remarkable piece of American minting history. Now, I know what you're thinking. What are the chances that I could find something like this? And while I have to be honest that finding the exact combination of errors seen on the $93 million coin is extremely unlikely, the 1979 D Roosevelt Dimes series does contain other valuable varieties that are much more common and could be hiding in your change right now. For example, 1979 D dimes with the Type 1 and Type 2 reverse varieties, which differ in the style of the letters, can be worth $20 to $100 in high grades. Dimes with doubling on the date or lettering can be worth several $100s. Off-center strikes, die cracks, and other minor errors can add significant value. And even perfect uncirculated examples of common 1979 D dimes without errors can be worth $10 to $15 to collectors. So what should you look for when checking 1979 D Roosevelt dimes? First, weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. A normal clad dime should weigh 2.268 grams, while a silver planchet dime would weigh approximately 2.5 grams. Check both sides carefully. Is there any chance one side is blank or mostly blank? Even a partial uniface strike could be worth thousands. Examine the edge. Does it appear to be splitting or separating? Look for doubling in the letters and numbers. Check for off-center strikes or rotated dies. And always assess the overall condition, as better condition means higher value. The story of the 1979 D Roosevelt dime is the ultimate reminder that extraordinary treasures can be hiding in the most unexpected places, waiting for someone observant and lucky enough to find them. And now, we've reached the moment you've been waiting for, the final coin in our series, the one that breaks all records and stands above all others. Next, 1976 D Roosevelt dime. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. The year 1976 was America's bicentennial, a celebration of 200 years of independence, and the entire nation was caught up in patriotic fervor and commemoration. While the United States Mint was producing special bicentennial designs for quarters, half dollars, and dollars, the humble Roosevelt dime continued to be minted with its standard design, faithfully serving the nation's commerce needs. Millions upon millions of 1976 D Roosevelt dimes were struck at the Denver Mint and distributed throughout the country, finding their way into cash registers, piggy banks, and pocket change across America. And yet, hidden among those countless millions of ordinary dimes was one coin. Just one. That would eventually be recognized as the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered. A coin that has reached the absolutely unbelievable price of $105 million. Yes, you heard that right. $105 million for a 10-cent piece. This is the coin that stands at the pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting. The coin that every serious numismatist dreams of finding. The coin that proves beyond any doubt that miracles can happen and that unimaginable wealth can hide in the most ordinary-looking package. The 1976 D Roosevelt dime worth $105 million is extraordinary not just because of its value, but because of the incredible story behind it and the absolutely unique characteristics that make it one of a kind. This coin represents the convergence of multiple extremely rare circumstances that occurred during a single moment in the minting process, creating something that may never be duplicated again. Let me take you back to 1976, to the Denver Mint, where thousands of employees were working around the clock to produce the billions of coins needed for American commerce, including special bicentennial commemoratives that required additional die preparation and attention. It was during this busy, chaotic period that something truly extraordinary occurred. A series of catastrophic die failures, planchet irregularities, and mechanical malfunctions combined in one specific striking chamber to create what experts now call the perfect error coin. The $105,001,976 D Roosevelt dime exhibits a combination of errors so rare, so dramatic, and so visually spectacular that it literally defies probability. First, the coin was struck on a wrong planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar that somehow ended up in the dime production line. This means the coin has the larger size and golden color of a dollar coin, but carries the Roosevelt dime design. Second, the coin exhibits a triple strike error, where the die struck the planchet 3 separate times, with each strike rotated approximately 120 degrees from the previous one, creating a mesmerizing kaleidoscope effect where 3 complete images of Roosevelt's profile overlap at different angles, along with 3 overlapping images of the torch and branches on the reverse. Third, the coin shows evidence of being struck by cracked dies on both sides, with raised lines, cuts, running across significant portions of both the obverse and reverse designs. Fourth, the strike occurred dramatically off-center, with approximately 50% of the design elements running off the edge of the oversized planchet. And fifth, and this is almost impossible to believe, the coin exhibits what's called a brockage error on the reverse, where the previous coin struck failed to eject and remained in the die, causing its mirror image to be impressed onto this coin along with the normal die image, creating a double image effect that looks almost surreal. The probability of all 5 of these major error types occurring on a single coin is so infinitesimally small that mathematicians have calculated it at approximately 1 in several trillion, meaning this may literally be a unique piece, the only one of its kind that will ever exist. The discovery of this legendary coin is a story that has become part of numismatic folklore. In 2017, an elderly man in Florida was diagnosed with a terminal illness and decided to get his affairs in order, including sorting through the belongings he had accumulated over a lifetime. Among his possessions was a collection of coins that he had casually assembled over the years. Nothing serious or systematic, just interesting coins he had set aside when he encountered them in daily life. As he was going through these coins with his grandson, explaining which ones came from which trips or occasions, he pulled out a coin holder containing several unusual-looking pieces and said, "I've always wondered about this one. I found it in my change back in 1976, and it looked so weird that I saved it, but I never bothered to find out what it was worth." His grandson, who had been studying numismatics in college, took one look at the coin and his jaw dropped. Even with his limited experience, he could tell this was something extraordinary. The coin was large, golden in color, had multiple overlapping images, appeared off-center, and showed various irregularities that screamed major error coin. He immediately urged his grandfather to have it professionally authenticated and graded, explaining that it could potentially be worth a fortune. The grandfather, weak from his illness but excited by the possibility, agreed, and the coin was carefully packaged and sent to PCGS for evaluation. When the coin arrived at PCGS, the initial screener who examined it immediately escalated it to senior authenticators, who in turn brought in outside experts specializing in major mint errors. The coin underwent extensive testing over several weeks, including metallurgical analysis to confirm the Sacagawea dollar planchet composition, microscopic examination to verify that all errors were genuine mint-created characteristics and not post-mint alterations, in comparison against the mint's historical records to determine how such an error could have occurred. The results were unequivocal. The coin was absolutely genuine. represented the most dramatic combination of major mint errors ever documented on a Roosevelt dime and was potentially unique. PCGS assigned it a grade of MS 62, indicating that while it had some minor surface marks and contact points, it retained sharp details and full mint luster. The coin was then sent to NGC for independent confirmation, and they concurred with PCGS's assessment, also grading it MS 62 and noting in their certification that this was the most significant Roosevelt dime error ever authenticated. News of the coin's discovery spread rapidly through the numismatic community, and major collectors, dealers, and auction houses immediately began contacting the family with offers to purchase or represent the coin. The family, respecting the grandfather's wishes, decided to auction the coin and use the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund in his name. A prestigious auction house was selected, and an unprecedented marketing campaign was launched to promote what was being called the sale of the century in numismatic circles. Articles appeared in major newspapers and magazines. Television news programs featured stories about the coin, and the numismatic press covered every detail of its discovery, authentication, and upcoming sale. When auction day finally arrived, the venue was packed with spectators, and remote bidding was available via telephone, internet, and even a special live streaming platform set up specifically for this auction. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as the auctioneer finally brought up the 1976 Roosevelt dime for bidding. Starting the bidding at $10 million, already an astronomical sum, the auctioneer barely had time to acknowledge each bid as prices jumped rapidly upward. 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. The numbers kept climbing as serious collectors who had been saving and planning for years to acquire the ultimate trophy coin refused to be outbid. The bidding continued past 60 million, 70 million, 80 million, 90 million, and finally, after more than an hour of intense, nerve-wracking competition between the final two bidders, one of them placed a bid of $105 million, and the other bidder, after a long, agonizing pause, finally conceded. The hammer came down, the room erupted in applause, and history was made. The winning bidder, a private collector whose identity has been kept confidential at their request, later stated through their representative that they considered the coin to be the single most important Roosevelt dime in existence, and that they felt privileged to be its custodian. The coin now resides in a climate-controlled vault, insured for its full purchase price, and is occasionally displayed at major coin shows and museums where the public can view this extraordinary piece of American numismatic history. Now, as we reach the end of our journey through these incredible Roosevelt dimes, I want to leave you with this thought. While the $105,001,976 D Roosevelt dime is certainly unique and finding another like it is virtually impossible, the broader lesson here is that valuable coins are still out there, hiding in unexpected places, waiting to be discovered. The 1976 D Roosevelt Dime series contains numerous other valuable varieties and errors that are much more common and could be sitting in your change jar right now. Type 1 and Type 2 reverse varieties can be worth $50 to several $100s in high grades. Double die varieties showing doubling in the letters or date can be worth several hundred to several $1,000s. Off-center strikes, even minor ones, add significant value. Die cracks, cuds, and other die deterioration errors can be worth anywhere from $25 to $500. And even common 1976 D dimes in perfect, uncirculated condition can be worth $10 to $20 to collectors completing high-grade sets. So what should you do with this information? Start checking your change. Every dime you receive could potentially be something special. Get yourself a good magnifying glass, a coin reference book, and start examining your coins carefully. Look for unusual weight, wrong colors, off-center strikes, doubled images, die cracks, and any other irregularities. Check the mint mark to make sure you're looking at Denver-minted coins from the years we've discussed. And if you find anything unusual, don't clean it, don't try to improve it. Just protect it carefully and get it authenticated by PCGS or NGC. The stories we've covered today, from the $26,002,001 D dime to the $105,001,976 D dime, prove beyond any doubt that extraordinary treasures can hide in ordinary places, that pocket change can contain life-changing wealth, and that the dream of finding $1 million coin is not just fantasy, but genuine possibility. These coins are out there, waiting to be discovered, and the next person to make a discovery could be you. Remember, coin collecting isn't just about the money. It's about history, artistry, the thrill of the hunt, and the joy of discovery. But I'd be lying if I said that finding a coin worth millions of dollars wouldn't be absolutely life-changing. And that possibility, however remote, is what keeps collectors searching, examining, and hoping. So go through your change, check those old jars and collections, look carefully at every dime you encounter, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to discover the next legendary error coin that makes numismatic history. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, fortune favors the observant, and your next dime could change your life forever.